Did the real Paris Hilton finally stand up in her new documentary, This is Paris? Hey there, welcome to another installment of What's That?
Sister Chat.
Yes, and sisters, we have something to chat about today because holy smokes, there is a new documentary on YouTube that is all about the one and only Paris Hilton. And after watching it, I was like, we have got to have a conversation. Like, first, I had to do some journaling because I felt like trigger warning, right? If you've not watched this yet and you're out there and you want to see it, trigger warning. But it was so good. There were so many interesting layers to the story. We probably won't cover it all, but I want to go ahead and dig in, sisters. Are y'all cool with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so my favorite quote from this entire documentary is when Paris goes, "Everyone says I'm the original influencer, but sometimes I feel like I helped create a monster." Okay, so is Paris Hilton the first influencer? Do you guys agree or disagree with this idea? And if she is, or if she isn't, did she create a monster? Is social media influencers a monster now? What do you think, Shell?
I think in a way she was the first influencer. I mean, everybody was following her when she was younger. She had paparazzi all around her. For the longest, I didn't know why she was famous. She was famous just because she was famous. I mean, there wasn't a reason. Later on, I found out, she's part of the Hilton empire. But in the documentary, they said that, she turned the camera on herself and she started doing selfies. And I didn't know that. So maybe she was the first person to do that. Whether or not she created a monster, I do believe she did. If she is the first influence. Social media could be good and it could be bad. It just, it depends. But yeah, it's a whole lot to deal with when you're like really, really up there, in status.
Yeah.
So
And we've seen some influencers sort of rise and fall, right?
and
There
fall.
have
And
been
when they
some
fall,
there
they
have been
fall
some
hard.
big hard falls, like you said, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting because Paris Hilton has not fallen in the public way that we kind of might expect from other influencers. So she's had this sort of like staying power that other people have, and that might just be because of her originality. And it's so funny that you brought up the selfie because I remember when that word came out. I don't remember what year that was, and I remember people started saying it. And I thought it was such a stupid thing, like this idea of turning the camera on yourself, and like that's not the way we do things. And like that's all we do now. Like I literally like selfie all the time in my marketing. So I think that that's a hilarious thing. Like I remember that Paris used to turn that camera around. Nobody knew what the hell a selfie was. She made that shit up. So it's so cool. Okay, Sharice, we want to know what you think. Are you there? Because your face is okay. You're blinking. I can tell. So what do you think?
Yeah, I was just listening. Yeah, so I think I don't really know because I maybe I was like too young to like know who Paris Hilton was at the time or like care who she was at the time. But I think that just like the whole idea of social media influencers being monsters, like I think that's a horrible way to put it. Like I think, like first of all, I don't think she created that, like made this like monster like mentality, I guess you can say. I think that the fans helped to create that. And because like once imagine like if you give somebody something and then they keep on taking it, it means you have to keep on feeding them. So
Right.
honestly, it's like the people on the other side, obviously the technology as well. Like when you see all these likes or followers or whatever, like we have like this thing inside of us that we always want more. Even she said it in the documentary, and I'm probably gonna misquote it a little bit, but she talks about like how she's gonna keep on going until she's a billionaire. And she's like, well, I made 100 million and that was my first goal. But it's like after I make the 100 million, I just got to keep on going. Then I'll be happy. I just got to keep on going. And even after I reach my goal. And I think that's the same kind of mentality that social media influencers have. that even the fans have. Like, oh my God, like how many things can I like today? You know what I mean? Like literally, like sometimes my thumb hurts because I'm like all day, like scrolling, you know what I mean? Like there's so many people with carpal tunnel right now, like for real, from texting and liking, double tapping and stuff. So, but I don't know if she created this. She's the first person to create the selfie, like, or she coined the term or whatnot, but that is what her documentary says, so I can believe it. But I also remember, like, I feel like other people used to do it, like, you know, not Paris Hilton, like not people on that level, but like, you know, when we had the digital cameras, when they first came out, like, I feel like people were taking pictures of themselves. And remember, we used to take pictures in the mirror before we turned it around, like before we realized, oh, we can just like flip our wrist. We used to be like, you know, taking pictures in the mirror and stuff like that. So I don't know if she's the first one. I'm happy, you know, she put it on blast, because like now, you know, we get to be like, we cute, and she like gave us the idea, I guess. But I don't know. I just think we shouldn't call them monsters. It's okay.
See, I think that's a burden anyways, right? Like this idea that there's something that's out of control that's happened in social media land that I'm somehow responsible for. Like she had obviously enough burdens. We'll get into that in just a second. She doesn't need to feel that way about that. And we are talking about a lifetime ago. So yeah, it's kind of funny because in some ways we're like different generations. Me and Rochelle are kind of older, and you and Shanika were kind of younger. But like Paris Hilton days, there was no social media, right? So this wasn't like I'm gonna post a selfie and then immediately be on social media. Now I'm getting likes. She had paparazzi walking around filming her all the time, right? She was on magazine covers, she was on TV, you know, she was an early adopter in the reality TV niche, right? The simple life. Like I grew up seeing so much of that. It was a different era. So in a lot of ways, she's like the godmother of social media, you know, because it hadn't existed in that way. But social media has allowed us to consume that information that would take a week for it to be on a newsstand, for, you know, it would take a little while until you'd see it on a website. But now everything is so instant. So yeah, I definitely don't think that she should feel that burden of that, because I think I mean, that's a whole different documentary we could go into, but let's not. Let's focus on this.
And I
one.
just say her no, I was going to say her, I believe it's her social media director or person over it. He was in the paparazzi business, and he said that he built his business off of taking pictures of her. Like his people, his crew would make thousands, even $1 million for just one picture of her.
Okay, the scene in the documentary where the girl comes and wants to take a picture with Paris and stands in front of Kim Kardashian because she wasn't famous yet was like one of the funniest moments, right? Because today everybody wants the picture with Kim, right? But in that moment, she's like Paris's assistant. She's like learning the game. And that's kind of funny because you're right. A lot of people made a lot of money up just getting the picture with her. What were you going to say, Sharice?
Yeah, so kind of along those same lines, I was gonna just say, like, you know, Paris shouldn't feel like she has this burden of like creating this monster. She should really, if she was the person who started this whole selfie idea and all this, and is the queen of social media or the godmother of social media, she should be really proud of herself, because what she's done is she has helped so many people, like literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people make hundreds of thousands of dollars on social media. Probably
millions of dollars. Millions
on social media. So she has actually, probably unbeknownst to her, she has helped like change the lives and impact the lives of so many people in a positive way. So I think she should actually be really proud of herself for that. So,
I 100% agree with that.
Including her assistant, Kim Kardashian. I mean,
yes. Yes, totally. Now that's a really good segue into this next topic, right? Because there's sort of this blueprint that exists now that people will even laugh about, where if you want to be famous, if you want to get to that next level, the blueprint for that is really to release a sex tape. And Paris brought this up in the documentary because this was a really big milestone. I don't know what the appropriate word for that is in her life. Now, this blueprint didn't exist before her, but after her, a lot of people saw how that moment catapulted people into fame. And a lot of people have said, Kim Kardashian used that blueprint to do that, just that. And, she's built a $1 billion brand. So we can certainly see some parallels there. But my question for you guys around the sex tape, I mean, I listened to Paris during the scene in this documentary, and it was painful, right? She said she felt like she was electronically raped. And the thing about this is that it was another time, right? Like we were saying just a little while ago, like the way that we treat people in the public eye when these sorts of things happen today versus the way that we treated them back then, I think are vastly different, right? And maybe some of that has to do with some cultural things that have happened, like the Me Too movement or whatever. But I think it's really interesting that the same week that this documentary came out, there was this big social media gaffe with Captain America himself, Chris Evans, where he accidentally posted a dick pic on Instagram stories, right? And what I thought was really interesting about this gaffe is that it happened, he pulled it down, and people came to his aid. People were like, that's his private business. We don't need to be in there. They started flooding social media with pictures of him with puppies and cancer kids and all of these things. And it was probably the most empowering I've ever seen people show up for a celebrity that had such a public mishap when it comes to sexuality. So I'm curious. I mean, I saw that and I thought, remember when Janet Jackson's nipple was accidentally exposed? Like there've been all of these things that have happened, and we did not treat people the way that they should have been treated. What are your thoughts on how Paris was treated in the media when the sex tape happened, and what do you think that says about where we are culturally today? Charisse, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you bring up a really good point. I was going to bring up the Janet Jackson thing as well. But I think that, unfortunately, women are seen different in the media than men. And this is a reality, it's a harsh reality that we face, but it is. And often I don't think, because men's private areas are harder to kind of accidentally see than a woman's. Like men don't usually, generally speaking, in America, men don't usually wear skirts. So because I remember, was it Lindsay Lohan, or not Lindsay Lohan? Who was it? It was one of those people that sat down and was open.
I think Lindsay Lohan and Britney Spears. I think they both had some of those. But the paparazzi also was trying to get those pictures, which I think is another thing where we're talking about the way women and men are treated differently in the media. I don't know. That's my opinion. What go ahead, Tree. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all good. So yeah, so I think that's one thing. I don't think that, so I think that it kind of was a surprise for people. And then also y'all, unfortunately, dick pics are super popular. They happen very often these days. And I think people have become desensitized to them. Literally, so they're just oh, okay, who doesn't have a dick pic in their phone? That literally. And I think Jennifer Lawrence, was it Jennifer Lawrence, or I think one of them went on and was oh, I got tons of boobs in my phone. You know what I mean? So I think it's we have this weird desensitization to it's kind of weird and kind of beautiful though, actually, because the human body is so beautiful. Okay. I don't know.
I get that too, but wasn't Jennifer Lawrence also a victim of her personal private pictures being released? I mean, I think that there's something to be said, and I'm certain. Go ahead.
Yeah, she was. But I think that's the whole point, and that's why she made that comment, because she knows what it feels like. However, I think there's a big difference, and that's what I was going to say, between what happened with Paris Hilton and Jennifer Lawrence and a bunch of other people who had their photos or their videos leaked versus an accident, oh my God, I didn't mean to show you guys that. Sometimes even I'm on social media and I'm on live or whatever, and I accidentally flip the camera and then people see my room and I'm oh my God, I didn't mean to show you that. You know what I mean? It's so easy these days for us to accidentally give too much information. And I think, there's a thing about being a victim, an actual victim where somebody literally means to do harm and malice to you versus oops, I made a mistake. And I think that I don't like we're so harsh the way we treat people, especially when they are the victim, because we like scandal, we never like to see them as a victim. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have did that, or you did that on purpose, or X, Y, and Z. And I think that's kind of wrong. We need to have more compassion in our hearts.
Right.
What do you think, Shells?
No, I agree. I found it very interesting when you brought up Chris Evans because I hadn't heard anything about it. So the fact that people really like helped to brush it under the rug really, it blew my mind because I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't hear about that. And I'm on social media all the time.
I got a crush on Captain America.
Oh.
He's so freaking cute, but go ahead, girl.
But no,
his accident.
His accident.
What?
I said you was happy to see his accident then.
I didn't see the accident. I didn't go looking for it because that's not my business, right? But I saw his name pop up on my news feed, and I was like, "What's this about?" And I was like, "Accidental dick pic? What?" So I read the story, right? I don't usually click on the stories. I just look at headlines, and I was like, "I'm gonna check to see what this is about."
No, but I would agree with what Sharice is saying. You know, the guy that Paris was dating at the time leaked the video, and so she had no knowledge of it. And when she talked about it, when she spoke about it, I really felt bad for her because I didn't know the full story. You know, me thinking, you know, she's trying to be like. I will honestly say, after watching that documentary, I have a whole different take on who Paris is. She's not the person that we see or that we've seen in the past. Like, that's a whole different, what's the word? A whole different side of her. Like, that's not even her. That's just a whole, I can't think the word just left my brain, but it's not
she
her.
calls it a character. She calls it a character.
Thank you. That's a whole different character. So when she was speaking about it, I felt really bad for her because she did not leak it herself for the popularity because she was already popular. Like paparazzi was already following her. She was going to nightclubs since the time she was 14, 15 years old. So just the fact that leaked and the guy did that to her made me feel really bad for her. And so as far as the nowadays, I mean, I think because it's been just, we might have become numb and desensitized to it because it happens so often. It's like, oh, another sex tape. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, another sex tape. Oh yeah, okay. And I guess when people saw that, it really catapulted her career in a negative way, but it still catapulted her career. Like she still became like this extra famous person. Everybody wanted to get at her and get a picture of her. She's on page 6 for I don't know how many weeks or months, you know, because of it. They were like, oh, well, let's go ahead and release a sex tape. And so we can get to, you know, that level. I just think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, that's personal business. I would be mortified if that happened to me. And as far as, you know, Captain America, I mean, like Cherie said, there's so many dick pics everywhere. I mean, what's another one? And, you know,
Captain America. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
You know, I don't know. But there's such a double standard when it comes to women and men. You know, women are supposed to be modest, men are supposed to be macho. So seeing a dick pic is like, that's technically what they're supposed to do. But if you see like Janet Jackson or Jennifer Lawrence, or like not even for them putting it out there, just an accident, it's like the whole world, like they are condemned by the whole world and judged because of an accident, something that they didn't have any control over, you know?
Right. Which let's just remind the people that like Janet Jackson didn't pull off her.
It wasn't her. It was Justin Timberlake.
And he didn't get backlash. I mean, I think, and this is a whole different conversation that I think we could really dig deep into. And I'm going to start to move us away from this in just a second, but I think it's an important distinction, right? It's like there are ways, there are situations that have happened in our popular culture where men had a very different experience than women, and even in that, I think that situation is even more interesting because you have a man and a woman. The man does the thing, and the woman takes all the backlash. I mean,
That's
it's
how
crazy.
that's how it's been from the beginning of time. Eve took the backlash for eating the apple. I mean, that's how it's been from the beginning of time. I mean, for
All
real.
right. On that note, we'll move on to the next question. I told you this documentary. Oh, Sheree said something she wants to say. Okay, last word on this. Go ahead.
One thing. I just want to say one thing, and it's really more about like what's going on now and like how they came to Captain America's like aid. Is also I think that we've learned how to use social media in a different way now. So everybody knew like go put a hashtag, go put a hashtag. So there could very well have been people trying to save Janet Jackson or trying to stand up for other people that this has happened to, but we didn't have the clarity or the know-how at that time on how to like have a voice that was loud enough and unified enough. So I hope that now they know that they can do that they continue to do that for other celebrities or people, humans, that this happens to, these type of things happen to. Like, y'all know how to use hashtags now.
Okay, we're gonna move on from that particular topic. I do want to say to Paris, we're so sorry that you had to go through that and you felt so violated on more than one occasion as a result of it. So I mean, I think that that's the true story here. I know I roped Captain America into it, but the true story is that this was a very young woman. She was like 18 or 19 years old in a loving relationship, or what she thought was a loving relationship. She felt pressured to go on video. I mean, she talked very openly about that. And then he used that against her at a later date. And so I was really sad to hear that. And it's interesting because the story that the media later gave us was that this was some sort of magical blueprint to create success. And I think that a lot of young women, a lot of young girls heard this and they thought that this was a path that I want to take if I want to create fame. And I think that's where she feels the burden, like we were talking about in the prior one. Did I create a monster? Well, this wasn't something that she created, but there was a story that happened that created circumstances for other people. So I think it's sort of an interesting flow, and it also shows again where she's done something, and in this case not intentionally, but she sort of pioneered a path. So Paris, I mean, is incredibly influential. But moving on to the next part, this is probably the most stunning part, or the most stunning revelation that we see from Paris, is she shares in this documentary that in her teenage years she had some rebellion issues, which many teenagers do. You learn about it when in life. It's a normal part of life, but she had some rebellion. Her parents didn't know how to handle it, and they sent her off to these teenage behavioral camps, right? These outdoors programs and things to help her reform herself, right? And that, or at least that's what they said that the point of it was. And she explained from her own point of view that she experienced quite a bit of abuse, physical, emotional, all sorts of things that were quite tragic and quite traumatic for her while she was there. She said the worst of that happened at a place called Provo Canyon. And that was pretty heavy, right? That's why I said trigger warning, right? If you haven't watched this thing, when she starts to talk about the abuse that she experienced. My question for you guys in this documentary, she tells her mom for the first time. Her mom finds out for the very first time that she experienced this type of abuse. Now, at first, there's a scene with the mom, and the mom kind of says, I kind of take it with a grain of salt when somebody tells me something. Look, we were doing what we could to save your life, right? And then the producers actually let her know that, well, did you know that they treated them like they were prisoners and there was solitary confinement and all this? Then later, Paris actually sits down with her mom and shares with her photo that she took when they were doing the campaign that had her list of traumas, which she said too was what she didn't want to put it all on there. She didn't want to expose herself that much. So it was worse than we saw, obviously. And that was the first time her mom really got an understanding of how much trauma she had experienced. I want to know what you guys' reaction was to her mom's reaction. What are your thoughts on how her mom reacted to these revelations that her attempt to save her daughter was actually the most traumatic time in her life, and she's still dealing with it today? Shelly, what do you think?
Whew. I was angry at her mom. Um, just for, first of all, let me say, when she described how they kidnapped her in the middle of the night, I would see that on movies and shows. I didn't know that really happened. Like, I thought it was something that you would see on in a movie. I didn't know people really experience stuff like that. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. And the fact that her parents just stood there and watched them take her away. Um, I don't know. I'm not a parent, so I can't say what was going through her parents' minds. I know they said that they were trying to save her life, but she was rebelling. She was skipping school. She was going to clubs. I mean, it wasn't like she was doing drugs. It wasn't like she was, doing any like criminal activity. I mean, she was being a normal teenager. And in a way, it felt like, oh, we have money. Let's throw money at it. That's my opinion. Maybe not everybody's. Like I said, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what was really going through their mind. But when she told her mom, I didn't really feel like her mom felt since like a sincere, and again, I don't know her, so this is just how I felt seeing it. I don't think her mom really truly believed her, or maybe she did believe her, but she's like in a denial state where it just didn't seem very genuine when she was talking to her. Again, that's my opinion. Um, so yeah, it just made me wonder what their like, what was the reason? Why would they do that? I mean, even when they would talk to her on the phone, like, I would think that you can tell when your child is going through something, you know. I mean, I'm a teacher and I can tell when my students are going through something. So for you not to realize your child is going through something, even when you might call her on the phone, like when she's at the school, something had to have been different. And the fact that after they took her in the middle of the night, the next morning, the parents acted like, oh, everything was okay. That just did not sit with me. I don't know. It's a whole
Yeah,
lot.
there was some very interesting keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing that they talk about in their family dynamic. Like, you had to be this perfectly polished, debutante kind of figure, and Paris was rebelling against that. At least that's what it looked like from an audience perspective. And I do think that that's a really good point that you bring up. The other thing that you said that I think is kind of interesting is this idea about whether her mom was being genuine. And as I was watching, I couldn't help but go, if Paris didn't have the other pictures with the other girls, I don't think her mom would have even walked away and believed it still. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was really smart of her to bring in other people who had that shared experience.
Experience.
And I
Hmm.
think that was, I mean, to bring that in, I think really hammered the point home, because otherwise, you know, I don't know that her mom would have even believed her. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Go ahead and add to the discussion. What do you think about this whole thing?
Okay, so I think that mothers always know.
Hmm.
Okay, and when I watched her mother's reaction, it felt like she was doing exactly what Paris said she always did, which was try to hide the secrets. And I
Hmm.
think she was really, really pissed off with Paris for putting it on tape, for letting the world know, like, hey, this
What
happened
was
to me,
happening?
and I'm telling you that my parents put me in this situation. I think she was pissed. I think she gave that little fake hug, and she was like really trying to squeeze the life out of Paris. Like, she was like, I can't believe that your love, that you're gonna come up here after I gave you all of this life, all of this fame, all of this money, and you're gonna sit here and you're gonna tell the truth on me. How dare you? I think she was pissed off. She, like, listen, when you run in them type of circles and
You have to
if you
hear.
put your child in those programs, you know
You
what's going.
know. Hmm.
There is no secret about it. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, I just was not buying it.
Yeah, I feel
I
you there. I
agree.
think for me, the reason that I couldn't buy that she was completely unaware, and I'm not saying that there aren't parents out there that didn't realize the circumstances that their kids are going, but this child was kidnapped out of her bed in front of
In the
you.
middle of the
You
night,
wouldn't in the
Screaming.
middle of the night
and
screaming
you
and
wouldn't
crying.
comfort your child.
And so that is in and of itself emotionally abusive. Like, let's not
Right.
pretend that that was not a traumatic experience that was at your hands. And I know she said, you know, well, but we did that to save you. I have to take what she says as a grain of salt. And to me, like, you can't abuse someone to save them. Those two things do not compute for me. And I mean, we could go into all sorts of conversation about parenting. And no, I'm not a parent, but I have been someone's child before. Right? I am a human. I am a soul, and I deserve to be loved and treated appropriately. And so did Paris. Paris deserves better than that. And this idea that somehow you could kidnap someone out of their bed and create that kind of trauma, and then somehow she's going to go and be in a therapeutic space. Those two things don't compute to me, right? And like, I have seen, you know, inpatient mental health facilities. I have had to help transfer kids to long-term care facilities, and I don't know what all of those environments were like, but I know that they didn't get kidnapped out of the bed to get there. I mean, there's a level of trauma and abuse that happened in that moment that you were 100% complicit in. And so I have a hard time with her sitting there and saying, well, you know, I had no idea. And then I thought, I mean, to me, it was a slap in the face to tell her, well, if you had told me, I would have been there. We would have never let that happen. No, you wouldn't
That's a
have,
lie.
because you watched me get kidnapped out of my bed. I watched a documentary many, many moons ago on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there anymore, but it was called Kidnapped for Christ. And it was a similar sort of thing. This is something that happens. And I watched it and I was shocked because I didn't know that this was something that was happening in the world at all. Right. And I watched this thing, and these kids who had all kinds of issues. Some were behavioral, some of them were gay, some of them, you know, were just not doing something that their parents didn't like. And they would do this thing where they would get kidnapped out of their homes in the middle of the night. And then they would go to these centers where they would get abused. And all I can think is, what the hell did you think would happen at a place where the way that they bring them there is through a traumatic? Anyways, I'm going to stop. But that was the thing. I can't, like, her mom's reaction. And I understand that a lot of that is her trying to keep her own facade up. She didn't want everybody to necessarily, you know, she doesn't want her cookie to crumble. She wants to continue to be this Hilton, right? But I mean, you have to live with the choices that you made. And then to me, that was a further victimization to say, well, if you had just told me, if you had just let me know. I mean, that is some straight up BS. Go ahead, Chelsea.
The fact that she ran away many times from each facility they put her in should tell you something is going on. That's
why they put her into a high what's it called, security, a high security basically prison or school, if you want to call it, or whatever they called it. And you know, I just wanted to mention too, like, about the kidnapping in the middle of the night, is that this is a real thing that happens, and doesn't just happen to children. Unfortunately, it also happens to the seniors in the elderly people in our lives. And I know not firsthand, but I know from my experience with the Black Lady Theater that, you know, that same thing happened to Judge Phillips, who was 77 at the time. And literally, these people hired these two big men to come into his house and take him to a nursing home facility where they just started treating him with medicines and things that he didn't need, and calling him mentally incapacitated when he was totally fine and very clearly in his right mind and still practicing law and still, you know, doing all of those things. So it's something that we really have to, like, pay attention to and look out for, also in the senior community. And also, like, these, like, parents who are hiring these facilities, you like, first of all, just ask, how are you going to pick up my child? Should I drop them off, or are you going to come steal them in the middle of the night? I would have a problem with two grown men going into my daughter's room
in the middle of the night
and pulling her out of the bed. Like, I would have a huge problem with that. I think Paris's mother, and I don't know what has happened to her father, but both of them, you know, first of all, her sister said, did you apologize to mom and dad? Did they apologize to her? And even in that, I mean, they just showed a little clip. I mean, I'm sure there was more to the conversation, but it don't sound like she apologized to Paris, the mother. It sounded like she was like, well, it's your fault that you ain't tell me that this happened. So good luck. I hope you deal with it. Like, she
Yeah.
didn't say, oh my God, Paris, I'm so sorry. Like, I really expected something heartfelt and warm to happen in that moment, and it just didn't. And I feel so bad for Paris, because I feel like now she's opened another scab, and it's going to be hard for her to repair that with her mother and her family moving forward. So I'm interested to see what happens with that, but it was crazy.
In those facilities, do your parents have to give permission for you to be drugged? Because they gave them drugs. Like, I don't know how those facilities
Oh, girl,
work.
they signed their whole rights.
Wait, what?
It appears that they signed their whole rights away when they give their children to them. I don't know. You can ask me, because she might know better than me.
I can't make any assumptions about this particular facility or any of those sorts of things. I know in a previous documentary that I watched where they talked about this sort of thing, it was called Kidnap for Christ. The parents basically give them carte blanche. They have some sort of medical power of attorney or something where they have the rights to do whatever is best for the child. But either way, if you're a minor and you need to take a medication, your parents are going to be the ones that have to consent. So whether they gave them a blanket
Consent form.
Waiver.
Yeah, consent, or whether they actually knew is unsure. We don't know if the facility called the parents and very politely said, hey, we've had some issues with Paris. She's acting out behaviorally. We'd like to put her on the following medications. And the parents said, absolutely, do it. We don't know if that did or didn't happen. What we do know is from Paris's perspective that she wasn't being told what they were doing to her body. And that is a problem, right? Informed consent is always going to be important.
That's absolutely true. But unfortunately, because she is a minor, right? A lot of times, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. No, I'm not saying it's right. Let me correct myself. I'm not saying it's right. But a lot of times people go, oh, well, the child doesn't know what they need. That we're just going to do this. We don't have to explain what we're doing to the child because they don't know. They don't know what's happening to them. And we don't give children enough credit for their own, like being in control of their own body and knowing what's going on with themselves. The fact that she got put into solitary confinement for not
because she didn't want to take the medication
didn't need is absolutely absurd. And that she had to sit in solitary naked and hungry. I just can't believe that you would do that. Like, that was disgusting.
Was it for like 23 hours or something like that? Some crazy amount of hours. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think she said she was in there for like 20 hours. Yeah, it is absolutely terrible. And I just want to be very clear that there's a time and there's a place for medication and when people have, mental health issues. And what we're saying here is that there's also a very important part, which is informed consent and knowing what it is that's going into your body. That's a very important thing. Now, there are people who are in situations where they cannot actually make that decision because they're not capable of doing that. We have no reason to believe that Paris wasn't capable of being a part of her treatment plan. So, it's a very disturbing part of her experiences. And I'm so grateful to her for sharing that because after I watched the documentary, I sort of scrolled through the comments and there were so many people who had been to facilities like this and experienced similar traumas and had similar stories. And, she's really opened up the conversation for them. So as we close out, one of the things I absolutely love about this documentary and about Paris is that she's now using this brand, this platform that she has started off the documentary and say, did I create a monster? And now you can see that she's really shining a light and being a force for good on issues related to, teens who get sent off to these types of centers, right? And she's working with the Breaking Code Silence to bring attention to this issue. I want to know your thoughts, guys. What do you think about these for-profit teen behavioral programs like Paris has described? Do we need to shut these suckers down now and for good?
I think that one of the ladies, and I forget her name, but one of the ladies, it was the one who didn't really want to go up and talk. She said something like, I don't feel like kids should be punished for expressing their feelings. And I think that was one of the strongest quotes that stood out for me in that whole piece. It's just like, we are so used to, as a society, like especially growing up, being told what to do, being programmed and turned into robots. Like even when you're in school, you're made to stand in a straight line, put your finger over your mouth, don't talk, sit down, don't run. Like when we were kids, we used to run on the curb and like try to balance, jump in puddles, things like that, And I see it so often today where parents are like, don't do that, stand up straight, do this, do that. And it's like so heartbreaking to me. Even like with this whole COVID thing, I saw a little boy, he was probably like 3 years old. And he was like, talking or whatever, walking with his mom and dad, or people who looked like they were his mom and dad. And he was like babbling and talking, whatever. And the dad went to go put his mask on the little boy. And the mom said, yeah, put that muzzle on him. And I was just like so upset by that. Like it literally, like I'm about to cry. Like it made me so sad, because the thing is, like, we have like as humans, like we are supposed to use our imagination. We're supposed to express, we're supposed to feel things. Like the fact that you can just say, okay, I'm going to shut that off, we're going to punish you for doing that. That is like that is like taking away your basic human right, and I just feel like it's so wrong. These things have to go away. There are better ways to treat these things. I would say to do some art, try art therapy, try drama therapy, there are so many other ways to do a therapy that you can, and approaches that you can take, than like literally beating someone, locking them away, kidnapping them. There's just so many other options. And yeah, I don't know, I'm getting emotional, so I'm gonna stop talking.
Shelly Shells, what do you say?
No, I agree with Sharice. There are so many better options than to go to send your children or people in general to places like these. I mean, there are counselors, therapists, people they can talk to. A lot of the issues tend to be traumatic issues that people just need to be able to express themselves and to talk it out with somebody, not be punished and beat down and medicated. I mean, I think that yes, they should be shut down. It's not the way to go. I did have something I want to say and I forgot, but yeah, I agree with Sharice. Shut them down. There are other ways to treat people. Oh, I feel like a lot of times, and like you hear about places like these with people who have money, and it feels like parents just want to. I mean, I don't want to say parents, but people just want to figure out a way to just like sweep it under the rug. So get rid of them. You go take care of it while we're over here. You go take care of the problem. Like have somebody else take care of their child's problem instead of working with their child. And that's why you have a lot of people now who have issues with their parents. I mean, you have to be able to communicate with your children. A lot of it has to do with communication and not knowing how to communicate with people. So I don't know. Shut them down. That's all I got to say. Shut them down.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like I've actually nannied for quite a few different families, and being someone who lives in these urban cities like New York and London and these different places that I've had the opportunity to babysit and nanny, children who tend to be very well off, whose families tend to be very well off. I've seen kids who've been sent to boarding school, or kids who've been sent to I won't say like this type of camp or this type of thing, but they've been sent away, very far away from their actual home. And like literally the whole time I'm watching this thing, I'm like praying, like, oh my God, I hope that these kids weren't actually enduring these circumstances and I had no idea. So for me, it's always been a lifelong dream for me to open up a facility where I could treat children who have been through traumatic experiences, who are in juvenile detention centers and things like that, using drama therapy. So, this really does hit home for me in a way, in a different kind of way, because hey, maybe one day I'll partner with Paris and we can open a drama therapy facility together and actually heal kids and not hurt them. I don't think that these camps should exist that are hurting people. It just shouldn't.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I kind of I had a similar experience in that I felt like as I was watching, all I could wonder is, did I ever help transfer some kid to some place where they get treated like this? You know what I'm saying? Because I worked in inpatient mental health, and there are situations where parents are overwhelmed and their kids are going through things that they have no idea how to process. And I think one of the things that's most interesting about this world that we're in this experience that we have of life is that very oftentimes we really aren't taught how to be in relationships. How do you love your partner? How do you love your child? How do you treat? I mean, there's books out there, there's resources out there, there are things out there, but we're never really taught that this is something that we should study and we should learn and that we should be, trying to fix. Instead, we sort of get into these relationships, we sort of get into these situations, and now, oh, I'm a mom, I better figure out what to do, and oh, I'm a wife, and now I need to figure out how am I supposed to navigate this relationship. And so much of it is just a guessing game. And what do I do now when it's not the normal situation that I dreamed up? And now my kid's acting out or they're having some sort of behavioral issue. And so as I'm watching, I'm just going, holy cannoli. Like this isn't just something that happens to well-off parents. I have sat down with families so many times and had conversations to them about the things that were going on with their kids and needing to have long-term care and needing, more help. And obviously we were sending them to places that we believe to be good places. But here's the reality. You never know what somebody will experience when they're when they're off site, when they're away, when you're not looking, right? You just never know what they can experience. So as I was watching, like, it was almost like a gut punch, like, oh my gosh, what is out there? Which places are the worst places? What are the things? Like, how do you help the kid who has the more difficult path, So it's painful. And definitely these ones where, Paris is talking about these sort of wilderness camps and for-profit things. I certainly think that they all need more oversight. And the ones that are like this, that are the for-profit ones that are very clearly a problem, yeah, shut those suckers down. But I do think that we find ourselves again in a situation where we have to start looking at mental health in a different way, right? We have to start figuring out better ways to help people when they're dealing with problems, because the reality is that this journey of life is filled with shit, right? There's so much stuff that we have to muddle through. And if we took more time and care and consideration in figuring out how to do that well, I think we'd be in a better space.
I agree. I think though too, just like, it's not just the mental health of the child that we need to look at, but it's also the mental health of the parents. Because
100.
in this particular case with Paris, and I don't know because I wasn't there, but it feels like this was not an issue of Paris having a mental health issue. This was an issue of her parents having a mental health issue. And I say that, like I said, I was not there, so I don't know exactly for sure. But it appears that Paris was being a regular teenager, that she was expressing herself. Obviously she probably was going through some things, but they said, oh, well, she was a tomboy. She wasn't a debutante that they wanted her to be. Or she started wanting to model. Her mom didn't want her to model. Now, of course, this is how this story has painted the parents. And I'm not saying that this is who they were. And I'm not, listen, I'm just saying that it's important to look at both or all of the players in the game and not just one of the players. I think it's important to assess everybody because everybody was impacted and had some kind of role in what happened. So
I definitely agree that, everybody's mental health needed to be considered, but this idea that Paris was just a teenager doesn't mean that there wasn't some mental health things that she was dealing with. I think sometimes we hear mental health and immediately there's a stigma that there's some diagnoses, but we all have periods of depression or sadness. We all have periods of dealing with things, and teenagers are filled with that, right? Like I had periods of sadness and trying to figure out how I feel fit in with the world, and all that had to do with my mental well-being, my mental health, not my mental illness, which is not what I'm describing here, but making sure that we're taking care of people's mental health. And it certainly sounded like, as a kid who was trying to grow up in a family where they had ideas of who she should be, and that was different from who she felt she should be, that she had some sort of conflict there. That's an issue that if we took mental health seriously and we thought about it in a different way, we could help people progress through without that seeing them have the sort of behavioral issues. Behavioral issues are often a sign that something is not right, right? And so if we approach mental health as not mental illness, because I think that those are two sides of the same coin, right? But we should be helping everyone from birth to death to make sure that they are doing well with their mental health.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I guess I just don't want it to feel like we are saying, or I don't want it to feel like I'm saying that what happened to her was her fault. Do you understand?
100%.
You know what I mean? Because
100%.
she was going through the things that teenagers go through, that, you know, or that she was going through even, that like, oh, you got sent to this place because it was your fault. Like you should, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm explaining it properly, but I just really don't want it to feel like that, because I think that there was more to the story is all I'm saying.
Yeah. 100%. Paris, nothing that you went through was your fault. And I think we should be very clear on that. If you are somebody who's watching this and you've experienced some sort of trauma, or you've gone through some sort of situation similar to this, it's not your fault. Right? That I think that that's a really important distinction that we make, right? Is that in life we all experience things, we all go through things, and it's not really about blame as much as it is about trying to help people get what it is that they actually need in life. And sometimes we're gonna have to do something different in this world to make sure that people are getting what they actually need, rather than continuing to do these extreme things that only screw us up more.
True.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to stop. We've been going for a long time here. There's so much more we could dig into with this documentary. It was so good. I commend Paris for going so deep and being so personal and sharing such a vulnerable side to her, right? This is a Paris Hilton that we've never seen. And we want you to go ahead and sound off in the comments. Did we finally meet the real Paris Hilton? And do you think that she is here to stay? Let us know down in the comments. Otherwise, we appreciate you to not forget to join the sisterhood by hitting subscribe. If you know somebody who you think would benefit from learning a little bit more, sharing this story, then go ahead and share this video with them. Let them join the conversation too. Otherwise, we look forward to chatting with you on another installment of What's That?
Sister Chat.
Until next time.
Bye.